Today I'm making a birthday card featuring this little bird and a balloon, 3 banners, and inside this card there is a happy birthday cupcake. It's really simple, and there's one complicated bit about it which I'll go through and show you how I made this look. My banner was shorter than I needed it to be, so I did a little trick to make it long, which I'll show. Okay. Let's go over the materials. These are the materials that I'll be using. These are the inks, the stamps, and one punch. I'll be using Memento, Tangelo, Rich Cocoa, Summer Sky, Pear Tart, Bahama Blue. I will also use Versafine, Onyx Black, Stampin' Up, Baked Brown Sugar, and Worn Lipstick Distress Ink. But you could substitute any of these colors that you wanted. I'm going to be using a Stampin' Up Balloon Punch, the smaller balloon. I'll be using the Stampin' Up Balloon Celebration stamp set, the Honeycomb Happiness, this bird here, and this cupcake from the Cupcakes and More by Fiskars. In addition, I will be using a Black Soot Distress marker, 3 shades of yellow, 1 shade of orange, and aqua. In addition, I will also use my water pen. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm not a train wreck. Okay, let's move all this stuff out of the way. The card materials that I need today are a card base cut to 11 by 5.5, a mat out of kraft 5 1/4 by 4, a strip of white cut to 4 3/4 by 2, a white square cut to 2 inches, a strip of kraft cut 1 3/4 to 2 3/4, a red strip 2 by 3.5, and a green 2 by 3.5. I've already cut the banners that I need using these 2 of the Sizzix banners die cut set in my Big Shot machine, and I had to do something a little different for the banners because let me show you the original card again. This banner is actually longer than the framelit can cut. So what I did was take the left side of these strips and cut them at 1 inch, and take the 1 inch strip and glue it on this side, and it's okay because it will be covered by this, and I'll show you as I go through. The next thing I need to do is make the banners to be a little bit longer. To do that, as I mentioned, I cut off 1 inch off the left-hand side of the banner. You have to be sure that you line it up into your cutter straight, because if you cut it crooked, it will be difficult to get your 2 sides properly aligned. It's at this point when I realized that I forgot to stamp the floral pattern on the kraft, so I caught that just in time. This floral stamp was in the cupcake stamp set, and I just randomly stamped all over it, twisting my hand a little bit to add a little bit of variation using the brown. I didn't have to stamp in the center, I just needed to focus on the edges, but I went ahead and stamped in the center anyway. You could have, of course, left this step completely off, but I thought it added a little bit of interest. Now to assemble the card. Ordinarily, I would have done the inside of the card before I did adhered the panel, but I figured it would be okay in this time. I'm double checking to make sure that I have the front of the card, and I'm gluing the first mat down. The first banner has to be on straight because it will affect how the other banners are attached. I allowed about a half an inch at the bottom, making sure that I have it on straight. And then the second banner butts right up against the first one, making sure that the points are even and that it is straight. Now I take the cutoff piece from the first banner and glue it down, and making sure that you have the pattern paper going in the proper direction. I had it upside down, but I saw that. Make sure that you line up the edges of the bottom before you press it down. And as with the first banner, the second banner, you just adhere the cutoff piece to the top, butting it right up against it. Making sure you keep the top edges straight. The third banner, I'm going to align the point with the point on the banner, making sure that the two pieces of paper go right to the center of the point and lining it up with the edge and keeping it straight. And the last piece goes on just the same way, making sure to line it up even with the bottom. Now I'm bringing the panel to double check and make sure that I have allowed enough room, and I have. It looks good. Now I'm bringing in my Misty. I've already put in the 3 pieces of the stamp for the balloon, and I've already put them in the right spot, and I'm getting my 2-inch square. It doesn't matter what colors you do for the balloon as long as you make the lightest color to be the solid stamp and the darker color to be the overlay. So I'm using the lightest blue. I've already figured out where to put the stamps to make them line up right, but if you hadn't, then you would just take the second stamp and place it right over it, and then close the door and pick up the stamp. And I'm using the darker color for the overlay. For the outline, I would have put the piece of paper back to the corner to make sure that I could really be sure how I was lining it up and I can get it lined right. But for speed, I already went ahead and put the outline at the 6-inch spot. So if I put my paper at 6 inches, it'll be fine. But this stamp is very forgiving, so as long as it's close, it'll be fine. It gives it a watercolor look. I'm double checking to make sure it didn't move because I'm not holding it and it's sort of free form. And it's fine. I'm happy with that. And I have to clean these stamps later. I have a second Misty, so I don't have to move these stamps. So I'm bringing that in to do the other stamping that I need. And I've already placed the stamps again, the bird, the sentiment, and the balloon. And I'm getting in my second white panel. And I realized at this point that I needed to put the paper to the top because I put the bird at the top, so I moved the paper. And I also put the magnet in the wrong place, but I realized that also and moved the magnet. I needed the magnet to ensure that if the bird didn't stamp well the first time, I could ensure that the paper would not have moved and I could have got a second stamp, which is the benefit of having the Misty. You can correct stamping mistakes that happen like that because it will stamp again and again in the same spot. But my bird came out perfect the first time, so I didn't need to worry about that. So I'm moving the panel down to the bottom to pick up the balloon, and unfortunately I put the panel in backwards, and I realized that after I cleaned the bird and the sentiment. And the magnet, I also put that in the wrong spot, but it would have been in the right spot. So I realized it and turned it all around. It's fine. And the balloon will hang over the edge of the stamping a little bit, but that's okay because I'm going to cover that balloon with the balloon that I have already punched out. And I got a good impression the first time, so I was very happy with it. I primarily just wanted the bow. I wasn't worried about it hanging over. Now moving on to the inside of the card. I'm trying to make sure that I am stamping on the right side. With the baked brown sugar, I'm doing the bottom of the cupcake. It looks a little light, but once the other colors come in, it will be fine. I'm bringing in a green, the Pear Tart, which will pick up the green panel from the front. Making sure that I stamp it relatively close to the edge of the paper of the cupcake tin. And I'm bringing in the red from the second banner. And now I need the flame, and I'm using the Tangelo for that. I'm going to go over that with a gold marker to make it look more like fire later. And now for the sentiment. The sentiment was a little wider than my block was, so I put it on diagonally, which is fine. The only thing to remember is to make sure that it is centered and you don't wobble it as you press down. And it came out just fine. And I give it a little shake because this ink is a little wet to make sure it dries. And now I'm going to do the coloring of the bird. You could have made the bird any color you want as long as you have several shades of the color that you've chosen, whether it's red, blue, purple, whatever. I'm going to speed up the coloring so you can get a shorter video. The important thing to remember about coloring is to make sure that you do it in layers. You start off with all over with your lightest color, and then you highlight it starting from the left side with the second darker color and a little bit on both sides, and then you finish with the final of your colors, the darkest one. And you can go back and forth until you're happy with how it looks. There is no right or wrong way, just keep going until you're happy with it. And then once you have the colors down the way you want, you bring in your water pen and you just blend the colors, starting from the light to the dark. And just keep going until you like it. You can always add more color if you think it's too light, but you can't really take it away if it's too dark. And now that I've finished the coloring, I'm taking my distress marker and outlining the edges of the panel with black. Be really careful at this point because you'd hate to send a black streak across your panel after you've already colored it. And this will make it pop up from the panel, from the background a little bit. And now to assemble the card. I'm going to use my bone folder and make sure I got a good firm crease one more time. And lining up the panel to make sure that I have cleared enough space for the balloon. I could have used foam tape to pop this panel up, but I thought that would made it a little bit too high for what I wanted. So I just glued it straight down with tape and making sure that I have room at the top for the balloon. Now use the punch to punch out the balloon. If I didn't have enough paper to hold it into the punch, I could always temporarily tape a little bit of extra paper and then use that as a handle. You hold the punch partially down once you get it lined up, and then using both hands you give it a punch and it'll pop right out. And I've decided I do want to pop the balloon up on foam tape. And little pieces all are needed. And I discovered that the balloon does stick a little bit over the top, but that's fine. I just need to make sure that I cover the outline of the original stamp so none of that shows. And that's the finished card. I decided I would like to add a little sparkle because you know me. And I sparkled up the beak a little bit to make it stand out a little bit. I would have preferred if I had an orange sparkle pen, but I don't. But I think it'll be fine. And I decided a little bit of sparkle would be good on the balloon. This was a very simple card, even though it had the little extra part to make the banner longer. And the coloration, after you get a couple of cards under your belt, it'll come second nature to you. I hope you enjoy the card and you'll try it yourself with your own color choices. I really liked it a lot and I'm glad I was able to share it with you. Thank you for watching and take care.